Well, let me find out something. How long are you guys together as a cohort?
1 year.
A year.
1 year, so you're veterans already.
Are we?
I always try to guess by how thick your journals are.
Oh.
You know,
Halfway.
I look at the journals. I've been doing presentations like this for, 15 years or so for the Graduate Institute. Before that, the Learning Collaborative, and before that, a master's degree program at Sacred Heart, which was based on this. And before that one at Southern, it was always, kind of, I'm a veteran of this. So what I say is from experience and not a reflection on you guys. It is absolutely not necessary for you to transcribe what I say. Okay, copying notes in terms of putting down lots of ideas or details is probably irrelevant. Okay, so don't try. I mean, the idea, taking notes is a good idea, but you know that after a year, the journal is not about me, it's about you. Okay, and it's about what your reaction to this is, and so those are the important notes to take. I speak pretty fast. I'll be happy to say something again if you really didn't get it, okay? But I'd rather not do that for the purpose of transcription, because we only have 6 hours together or something like that, so it's not really a great deal of time. There are a couple of data gathering things we're going to do. I'm going to ask you for some brief written work product, and we'll be reviewing it. You don't have to take notes on that. I will agree to send you the notes that I take on my computer. So I have a handout with my email address on it, and if I forget, remind me. Okay, send me an email, and I'll take care of that. Well, even though we're being transcribed, I always assert what happens here stays here. So it's on pain of death for you if you leak out things, because we have to be able to trust each other, which you probably already do because you're a year together. So that'll be good. The title of this presentation changes according to my growth. Right now, it's called Discover Meaning, and the subtext of this day's work is going to be an exploration of how meaning develops and what it feels like when something acquires meaning to you. I mean, I could say, what does it mean when we talk about meaning? But that's, an infinite regress. We never get over that. So we're going to explore the process by which humans recognize meaning. That's another phrase I might say, when it happens to you, or you recognize it, or that's Socratic. Socrates thought that you already have all the information, you just forgot it. And so the process of remembering it, recognizing it, having it come forward, or a different psychological background, more modern, from the structuralists in the 19th century, they would have said that you apprehend meaning. Meaning is something that you capture, apprehend literally, as if you're holding it up and saying, hands in the air, meaning come to me. I'm going to have some brief notes today. I will probably talk more at you for the first hour or so, and then you will be talking more. I'll have some performance stuff, and I'm going to invite you to do some out loud work as well. But the issue is not about performing. Let's remember how this computer works. Okay, that picture was taken a few years ago. Okay, when I had more dark, although some of that is Gratian formula. The idea behind this is, who am I? And there are 2 links that are supposed to work here. Neither one link does work, so I have to get out of this and into my my folder to talk about who I am. And one of the things I am is a person whose eyes don't work as well anymore, so I'll be back and forth with this. one of the people I am is this guy. This is my acting resume. The shot on the purposely blurred shot on the right is me without a beard. So I have to talk about my beard. I grew my beard in 1974 for a part. I was playing Colonel Thomas McKeon in the 1776 musical. That's the musical about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. In 1974, we were waking up in the United States to the fact that our country was almost 200 years old, and people started looking to celebrate the Revolutionary War period and independence. So that particular play became very popular. I think I did that play 8 times between 1974 and 1977, always playing the same stupid little role. Thomas McKeon was the only Scot I got to do an accent. He's the only person that the directors would allow to have a beard, and it was the 70s. I made a lot of enemies amongst fellow cast members. We're all ordered to shave while I could just develop. And in the plot of that play, McKeon is from Delaware, and he gets to ride from Philadelphia to Delaware. Not a big deal now, okay, but then, you know, a trip. And to rescue Caesar Rodney, who was on his deathbed, they all thought. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you? I'm Ed.
Hi.
And Caesar Rodney gets brought back to cast the deciding vote to change the tie vote about independence. So in that backstory, I grew that beard, and I really liked it. So I kept the beard in spite of social pressure and from my mother. I was adult at the time. But my younger sister was getting married, and I was giving her away, and my mother was absolutely appalled that I would be wearing a beard down the aisle, and I stuck to my guns. And about 4 months later, I got cast in The Odd Couple as the cop, Murray the cop. And the director said to me, look, Ed, it's early 1960s, it's New York City, a cop could not have a beard. So you have to shave, and that was the result. That picture, that it's on the right, me without a beard and multiple chins, which I didn't know I had because they were hidden by the beard. So 2 things happened as a result of that. One is that my mother called me up. She was coming to opening night, and my mother called me up and said, Murray shouldn't have a beard, because she's no dope, right? And I said, we covered it with makeup. So she's in the audience saying to the woman next to her, that's my son, and he's got a full beard, but it's covered with makeup. So anyway, acting has never been a vocation for me because I'm one of the 95% of the union members of that union who are out of work most of the time. The Equity Union and SAG, Screen Actors Guild, both have the record in the United States of having the most out of work members. Okay, you very often get caught in a production where you have to join the union, and it takes whatever they pay you for that time to get your union card, which you then have forever, so you don't have to reapply for it, but I haven't used it in years. And my resume, my acting resume, includes some work that I've done with some really interesting people. So the last line there, I played The Odd Couple. I played Vinny in that production of The Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. Tony is now gone, and Jack is not. Jack is senile, actually, right now. But it was the last time that those 2 people played The Odd Couple. We did that as a benefit for the Stratford Festival Theater in the Schubert Theater in New Haven. And I can't tell you what a thrill it was for me to take a curtain call holding Tony Randall's hand. I mean, wow. I mean, it was just a real gentleman of the theater. Chris Plummer, Keir Dullea, David Sills, Ron Rifkin, Stephanie Powers, who I'm still in love with. I fell in love with Stephanie Powers when she was on TV, and I'm going to tell you, Jim Norton, James Earl Jones, Len Cariou are all people I've worked with. You remember Stephanie Powers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't it Heart to Heart? Was there?
She was
Yeah.
the Heart to Heart,
Yeah,
right?
she
And she
detective,
was the girl from Uncle before that, actually.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
If you saw her, you would know.
You would
Yeah.
start
Watch it.
tall, thin, long hair, brunette, body to kill for, still does Pilates, you know, a dancer's body, which still is.
She was
dancer's
married
body.
to William Holden.
Yes, she was associated with William Holden. They never married.
Oh, they didn't marry. Oh.
But he left her everything. And he was astonishingly wealthy. So when I met
Astonishingly wealthy or
wealthy,
Yeah.
wealthy.
Yeah.
When I met Stephanie, we were doing this. What show was it? The Adjustment. The Adjustment was a very fun show. It was about a chiropractor who was a very religious Jew, and he was not a very religious Jew. He was a fallen away Jew, and he was treating a woman. Ron Rifkin played the chiropractor. Stephanie played the woman. All the other roles in the show were played by me and Tyler Bunch, one of my friends. So I played 3 roles. Tyler played 4. In a series of scenes, we go through this person's confrontation with life and dissatisfactions with life, and finding a belief in a higher power. I won't say necessarily higher religion, but certainly connected with his spiritual self during it. Very, very powerful movie. Role. It was never a movie. We did this as a workshop, which we rehearsed in Ron Rifkin's apartment in New York. He was currently at that time in Cabaret in Manhattan. And Stephanie was on her way from Malibu to Paris and then to Africa, where she has estates in each of those places. So it's stuff. She owns 27 horses for her own use. Some of them are in Malibu, some of them are in Paris, some of them are in Africa. I mean, this trick about is an issue of, this is a sidebar. I want to apologize. I do Flight of Ideas a lot. I fantasize, and it connects to me in strange ways. So I'll share with you the associations. Capitalism only works if somebody makes toys that make people want to have more money. So you have to have continual toys, okay? I bought tickets for my grandchildren are coming into town next week, 3 of them are, and I bought tickets to see the Cirque du Soleil at Radio City Music Hall. I remember going there as a kid, you know, standing in line outside and freezing and going to the automat. That's how old I am. The automat's gone. We want to guess what they charge for the first 10 rows? For one seat in the first 10 rows.
150?
150,
Yeah, I'm
200.
thinking.
Wow. Really?
Oh my
$340
Woo!
a seat.
And you wonder why kids don't have enough exposure.
You know, now it's a huge theater, of
You
course.
can't afford it.
So if you haven't been in Radio City, there is a huge orchestra. There's a balcony. There's another balcony. The last row, $70. I can't imagine. They're filling the place. I can't imagine. But the issue is capitalism works because there are some people motivated to make enough money to be able to spend $350
And
in
say
the
they could
front
do
row at Radio City Music Hall.
It's supposed to be a fantastic show.
What is an automat?
What is an automat?
The Automat, near Radio City.
All right, the
Yeah.
automats were restaurants in New York,
Okay.
which were self-service. The magic thing was you were separated. If you go to a buffet now, you stand at a counter with a sneeze bar and you reach underneath to get your salad. The deal about the automat was that the kitchen was separated from the public by a wall. And in the wall were little mailboxy things.
Okay.
And each mailboxy thing was a vending machine.
Pick out what you want.
So you could put your nickel in, turn the turn, and get your piece of pie. Okay, and another nickel would get you the soup, and another nickel would get you a sandwich. And it was a small chain, so I'm 65 years old, so when I was a kid, 50 years ago, plus, the automats, there were 5 or 6 of them in Manhattan. There was one right on the corner of Radio City, and it was part of my family's Christmas ritual.
It was so cool looking. Art Deco.
Right, a very Art Deco, right, Radio City by itself.
bring that back.
Bring it back.
Art Deco.
That's something
It's
that
cool
shouldn't
stuff,
have
you
went out
know,
of business.
except now it would be a dollar changer.
You swipe your card.
A pie would be like $8.50.
Yeah.
Now, can I ask
Use
you
your
a
card.
question? Is that Mary Martin that you were?
Mary Martin, yes.
Really?
Mary Martin. The Whitechapel was a kind of Sherlock Holmesy thing about the Jack the Ripper, and I played the Scotland Yard detective. John Tillinger and Mary Martin were both in that production. So it's been a hobby of mine to act, and it's been a great deal of fun. I have a couple of movie credits, which you've probably never seen. My big one is Pirate Tales, in which I played Blackbeard. And that's how you can get from me to Kevin Bacon, through Roger Daltrey, who was the narrator. I never met Roger. We shot this all in pieces, and this was a show that I had no lines. It was one of these kind of docudramas about the tales, and it was a 2-night, 4-hour TNT production. I had 15 minutes in the second night of it, and I was in all the trailers because I looked really good as Blackbeard. I mean, my hair was shoulder length at the time, and they tied crap in it, and they gave me beard extenders. My beard, and
Can I make a comment?
yeah.
Maureen Hamill,
Yes.
sister-in-law.
Really? Say hi for me. I haven't seen Maureen in too long. Maureen used to do a
Really?
lot of musical theater at Sacred Heart.
Oh, I know.
Right,
I've known
and-
her since I was 18.
And so I've been at Sacred Heart so long that I remember when Maureen did Downtown Cabaret at Sacred Heart
Yeah.
with
Patty Hemingway.
Patty Hemingway and Bob
Fallon.
and Bob Fallon, thank you, and those other guys who made it, like
Claude.
Well, Claude made it out. Claude is still working in Indiana.
Yeah. Did you know Patty died?
Yes, I was at the funeral.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm good friends with her husband, Don, from Sacred Heart. So that was part of my, I started at Sacred Heart in 1970 when those people whose names you just mentioned were undergraduates, along with John Ratzenberger, for example, was the big name from that crowd. He really made it. Patty did Evita on Broadway. That was her high water mark. And Maureen has a set of pipes like you wouldn't believe. I mean, she can sing, and she can belt, and she can do almost semi-opera acts. So she used to run a summer camp at Sacred Heart. So I did work with her quite a few times. All right, so that's who I am at night, and since 1966, I've been working with Louis Burke, doing Shakespeare, around the struggle to get the Stratford Theater open. Those of you who are local enough to know that it's still dark, and it's been, in 1996, 1996, we had acquired the deed to the theater and had spent $3 million renovating it, and the bottom of our financing dropped out 2 weeks before we went into rehearsal for The Tempest, the summer of '98. And so they were, and it just fell apart. And it's dark and probably needs about $15 million to renovate it, not to mention.
I'm sorry, was that the Stratford Theater?
The Stratford Theater,
Oh, I
right.
just drove by there, and I keep wondering, why isn't somebody doing something with that?
Hey,
They're trying to do the
I will
outdoor
use the whole
things.
workshop talking about that if you start me on it. It's,
Because isn't that where Katharine Hepburn went? and-
Katie Hepburn was there. Chris Plummer was in the first production there. Kate Hepburn, I don't know her, had a little cottage on the water.
Oh, I was there. I went there last summer on a
Right.
bike trip.
Right, and the,
She died though. She wasn't
yes,
there.
well, she had a
Maybe
cottage,
she
she
was.
lived in Stratford while she worked there.
Wow.
While she worked there. That was one of the other childhood memories, the Radio City Music Hall, and being a high school student in New York and coming to Stratford to see Shakespeare as a kid. And from about 1954 through about 1978, 1980, 95% of the high schools between Philadelphia and Boston attended Stratford Festival Theater at least one show a year to see Shakespeare, produced live by real live actors and some of the great names. James Earl Jones, Othello was one of the.
I grew up on Long Island and I came as a field trip.
Right. Well, I grew
Elementary
up in
school.
Queens. I grew up in Queens in the
Thinking I was in like,
country.
I don't know, some year, and then I ended up buying a house 2 blocks away from it when I was an adult.
Well, yeah, so it's a beautiful theater. From an actor's point of view, among the remarkable things about the theater is they had never implemented amplified sound. The theater's acoustics were good enough so that an actor in the right hot spots on the stage could carry the entire theater, a 2,500 seat theater with a huge balcony. It was unfortunately only designed for fair weather work, so the heating system really is bad. In the wintertime, you just freeze. It has the largest backstage of any theater on the East Coast of the United States, wait for it, except for the Kennedy Center and Radio City Music Hall. So backstage of that theater is 2 football fields in each direction. So it's 200 yards by about 150 yards backstage, which means that you can mount a set on a truck and park it somewhere backstage and drive it into place so that you understand what I mean by a truck? I don't mean a Mack truck. I mean a thing on wheels that can be pulled by cables out, and so you can completely change the set in about 7 minutes.
Is that, now, am I thinking of the right one? Is that the one on, what's that road that it's on?
Elm
Shore
Street.
Road.
Elm Street.
Right,
Yeah,
it's right
off
off
Elm
Elm Street.
That doesn't look like it would have, because it has such
Front is small.
an unpretentious front.
Well, the front, it was built in the 50s as a summer theater. It was intended
So
to be a summer
behind there,
theater.
there's all that?
There is, what you see, if they have left down the barriers so you can drive in or walk in, as you walk around the front area, there's a little lobby, and they're behind the orchestra, stairs going upstairs. And the stage, the theater is rigged so that what you see from afar, the cupola that goes up, that's a full fly tower, which means that they can bring sets up into that. It uses over 6 miles of rope back there. And then behind the stage is this huge backstage area, fronting on the pond there. The scope of the building is remarkable because of the height of it. It diminishes the size of it visually. So
Wow, I'm gonna stop
really
there on the
remarkable.
way home.
Stop there, say hi for me. I haven't been in it in too long, but it's a wonderful place. The walls are teak, solid teak, the inside walls. When we took it over in the 90s, in the late 90s, it had been inhabited by vagrants and teenagers, and a lot of people had spray painted on the teak. So here's the magic about teak: with a little bit of oil, the spray paint just rubbed off clean. Okay, it didn't absorb it. It was just gorgeous stuff. There are some sculptures in there that are period sculptures from the 50s.
So are they gonna do anything with this beautiful building?
Let me get off this and get back to work with you. I can talk for hours about this. The question is, who's they? And at the time, it was originally built with private money in the 1950s, and there was an angel who lived in Westport who at the end of the year would write a check to cover their rent. So they did all this magnificent work without doing a lot of fundraising or creating an endowment to hold the theater ready. When the angel in Westport died, he didn't leave the theater in his will. He didn't bequest it. But that was what the expectation that his fortune would just come to the theater. It didn't. And so it struggled mightily. It took about 6 years for it to die. When it died, before it died, a consortium of banks in Connecticut was supporting it with mortgage money, and the theater organization defaulted on the mortgages. So the state of Connecticut took it over and tried to run it. And they tried to run it as a booking house, which means they hire traveling companies to come in, and the business model doesn't work. Okay, the biggest booking house in Connecticut is the Shubert Theater that gets a $15 million a year subsidy from the state in order to break even. Okay, and the reason booking companies don't work is because the booking company takes its cut off the top, and anything that's left over you get. So if you bring in a really good production and it packs the first 2 nights, the rest of the run is for the theater. Okay, if it's not a really great production, and some of the stuff they bring in is so, and it doesn't fill the house the first couple of nights, you don't, the Shubert doesn't see the money. And so it's expensive because you have to, when we did Odd Couple in the Shubert, we had to hire 10 union workers, even though we had no set. We had no, I'm not anti-union incidentally, but we had to pay for 10 union workers, including 2 electricians, 2 lighting people, and 6 stagehands, even though there was nothing to move on stage. We had 1 sofa, which we put out, which we weren't allowed to carry out. They had to carry out. But we had to pay them off the top, full scale. It was a benefit. We brought in our own lighting people, we brought in our own electricians, but they had to have the union people sit next to them. They were from Manhattan, they weren't part of the same local. So booking houses don't work for brief shows, unless you've got a very large venue where you can put in 4,000 or 5,000 people for a show. And then booking houses can work because you get your money off rock concerts. So when the state failed, the theater was dark for 10 years, at which time they put a lock on the door and didn't check to see if anybody was using the door. I mean, there are a lot of doors, there's a lot of ways in and out of that theater.
I've been in there. I opened the front door and walked in. I'm like,
Right.
I didn't think they locked this place.
Well, the locks didn't work, and hope you didn't get hurt, because when we walked in,
I was just
one
like,
of our
oh.
people fell through the floor in the lobby because it had rotted out. There's a lounge underneath the lobby floor, and they fell through it. It was just, it was in that bad a disrepair. So it's sad. So the state eventually gave us, the Stratford Festival Theater Company, the deed, and we leveraged the deed before we had it in our hands. So we went to a group of banks and we said, we've got a business plan. We're going to run 2 different shows in repertory for the first year. We're going to build an outdoor theater, so I'll have 3 shows going regularly. We're going to build a hotel, and we're going to build a little community. We had the plans out. And so People's Bank came forward and lent us, wrote a check for $12 million to support it. With that check, we ripped out the seats, we replaced the carpeting, we were in the process of replacing the seats. We hired a cast for Tempest, we hired a cast for a show called You Can't Take It With You, I was cast in all of those. That we had 4 shows. The Boyfriend I wasn't cast in. It was going to be a musical we're running that first season. 2 weeks before we opened rehearsals, the state, one of our local legislators was concerned about whether we were really going to do what we said we were doing, and had a codicil put on the deed that said if we ever failed to mount a Shakespeare production in a given year, the state would take the theater and the property back. And People's Bank said, you don't have clear title to the property. and they took the $12 million back.
Because you didn't do a Shakespearean play?
No, because the state put,
case.
the state put, what is effect, a lien on the property, which gave them the right to recover the property if we in a given year did not give a Shakespeare play. We fully intended to have lots of Shakespeare on there, because that's, what we were doing at the time. But that state legislator, maybe with good intentions or not, but he destroyed the financing, and within 3 years, we were bankrupt, and we couldn't finish putting the seats in. Without the seats, we couldn't get a certificate of occupancy, we couldn't have an audience in the theater, and it just reverted to the state. The state didn't know what to do with it, they gave it to the town. No, I'm sorry, but I have a lot of respect for town governments. Not. Okay, they're a bunch of local guys who are dedicated to their communities, but they don't know from theater. And they have, in the past 6 years, awarded the contract to developing the theater to 4 different groups of people, none of whom are us, and none of whom were able to bring together the money to do the project. And so Stratford has the satisfaction of owning it. My sad prediction is that at some point, somebody's gonna realize the value of that land as condominiums, and the theater will disappear.
Yeah, because they have that next door,
Louis Burke, who is my friend, who is the producer director of our group, lives in that little house to the right of the driveway on Elm Street.
Yeah,
And they took his backyard to put those condos in.
yeah.
Around there
That's for
8
sale,
years ago.
that house. It
Right.
must be his house, it says for sale by owner. It's
Right.
the one right in the front with the pillars.
Right, it's a historic house of some
Yeah,
kind,
it's on the
right?
market now.
Right. There's a house on the left, which was the office building for the
Right, yeah.
for the theater, and the house on the right is Louis' house. But to me, it's a sad episode in my life. Now, what I do the rest of the year, the rest of my time, is I'm an educator. Let me see if I can. This is an old theater, but it'll work. I've been at Sacred Heart University since 1970, when I was a year and a half old. There we go. I have a doctorate in psychology. I'm a research psychologist. My research areas deal with computer models of cognitive processes, way more complicated than we're going to discuss at this time. But it's important, and I've been running the education department at Sacred Heart, which recently was nationally accredited, and it was that's a good experience for me. But my combined work as my day job as I took a leave of absence in '98 because that was the year we were going to open the theater. Didn't work. And during the time I've been at Sacred Heart, I've done a lot of things as provost and academic vice president of academic affairs for a while. And in that role became good friends with Bud Stone, who was one of the founding fathers of the Graduate Institute, and through him got connected with this. So this is my professional educator's resume. I run the education department without benefit of ever having taken a professional education course or holding a degree in professional education. I'm a bureaucrat at Sacred Heart. I know how the system works, and I stay out of the way of the talented people who work for me. Okay. Most of you, I'm presuming, because that would be typical of such a cohort, have something to do with education. Right?
Yep.
Teachers? Elementary school? High school? English teachers?
Christine, the one who's not here.
Good. Fat on English teachers. No.
Occupational therapist.
OT, excellent. We have a strong OT department at Sacred Heart. You know,
I know.
in the college that I'm associated with. So here's in brief why I'm here with you today, as my psychology and my Shakespeare merge. I'm going to talk a little bit about this general thing called learning and why, not learning, but meaning, and why it connects to Shakespeare. And then we're going to use Shakespeare as a laboratory. Not to give away the speech. Americans very often pay lip service to honoring Shakespeare. If you ask them, they'll say, Shakespeare's great. Okay? If you ask them to list the best books ever written, the best plays ever written, Shakespeare's on the list. If you ask them, have you gone to see a live performance of Shakespeare in the last year? Okay. Typical of Americans. No. Why? Why don't people go to see Shakespeare? Well, we're going to deal with some of that issue. But here's the reason I picked Shakespeare as the focus, because I'm a Shakespeare actor. You can guess which roles I get to play. I don't get to play Romeo or Juliet. Pardon?
Why not?
It's the beard. If we're going to investigate the process by which meaning develops, what I wanted to find was a fertile pond to fish in. A pond that you would believe has fish in, but where you may not have found a lot of fish before. So I'm going to teach you how to fish in the Shakespearean pond. I'm going to teach you how to extract meaning from Shakespeare without effort, it's not a grit your teeth, try hard stuff. It's just the reality is what I want to talk about with you is the experience of having something pop up and say, oh my God, that means something. Okay, and see that it means something. There are a lot of choices I could have done Where's Waldo pictures, where you search for there it is, or crossword puzzles, or word searches, or puzzles of many kinds. But I know more about Shakespeare than I know about those things. And so on the premise that you would be willing to believe with me that Shakespeare contains the opportunity to discover meaning, and in ways that you may not have done before, and that this will give us a way to go through some materials with you and let you have the opportunity of having something click, and then ask you to pay attention to what happens when that goes on. So I'm going to ask you to do what's called an introspective activity during this whole day. That is, the introspective idea is that you look into yourself, a place that I can't see directly, but you can, and pay attention to opportunities when meaning happens. Now, let me just ask you to think about, I've been chatting for a while today already, for almost a half hour, and during this time, people have had the experience that I'm talking about. Can anybody think of a time during this last half hour when something clicked into place for you?
A lot.
Well, anything. So I want to be specific.
Oh.
Am I specifically thinking you recognized that I knew Maureen Hamill?
Yeah.
And suddenly we did the secret handshake thing,
Yeah.
and we got a whole bunch of names. Okay, that's part of that's a meaning. It's a connection that happens. Okay, that you recognize that you didn't know about automats, but you did. Okay, and so you didn't have that experience of connection, but you did. And so when I said automat, a light bulb went on in you, and you were courageous enough to say, "What is that they're talking about?"
And an emotion. Going there with my grandmother in the past.
Yes, because that's,
Came up.
as a psychologist, I have to say that the signals that tell you something important's going on are emotions. I'm not talking about heavy tears, although that can happen, okay? But I am talking about the connections that go on in your life that are important to you, are related to or tagged with emotions. And if you're looking for signals about what I'm talking about today, pay attention to how you're feeling. Okay, it's something you don't always do, but something I said made a link, got an emotional tone, you felt good, you had to share it, so that's an exemplar of what I'm talking about meaning connecting. It's not always positive emotions. Sometimes it's discomfort. You were a little uncomfortable. You felt outgrouped. You didn't know. We were doing the handshake over here, and you didn't get it, so you asked the question, okay? And that prompt, your feeling at that time, your impulse at that time was to say, I want to try to connect to this. And so, now you think about it, some people don't do that. And they stay uncomfortable. And they stay dissatisfied, okay? Using that term typically because I think that the development of meaning is something that is satisfying. It satisfies something inside us. Now, there's a very simple idea about emotions. It's about emotions and motivation. Most motivational research indicates that on some very basic levels and sometimes very sophisticated levels, we respond to needs. So that's a statement which defines need. A need is something you respond to. You recognize that you're deficient, and on some level, it may be subconscious, you recognize that you're deficient, and when you act in such a way to satisfy that need, it feels good. Now sometimes that can be very surface and purposeful. I need to have an advanced degree. Okay, my job requires it, my life's required, my personal impetus requires it, so I take the action and I register, and I spend 2 years working on the degree, and it feels good, you know, when you graduate and you get that degree. Okay, satisfaction is pleasurable. Some needs are very basic: food, water, oxygen, among the most basics. Sex, contact with other people, security, higher order needs, you know, falling in love, power, achievement, affiliation, are all examples of needs. And so the motivational literature is filled with exemplars of how people act in a way to satisfy their needs. Okay? And sometimes there's surprises. I ran a workshop for undergraduates at one time. It was the workshop was about self-applied behavior modification. And the idea was, what can you do to help yourself lose weight, stop smoking, whatever. I did stop smoking. The other didn't work for me. One of the things we did was we asked people to keep a behavioral diary and write about what's going on in their life and pick a focus. I want to focus on this. So, for example, if I was counseling somebody to stop smoking, I would tell them, don't try to stop smoking. I just want you to write down every time you have a cigarette and what happened just before it, what happened just after it. And in this workshop, people would bring this stuff together. And this one young woman said to me, what are you working on? I said to her. She said, I would like to stop fighting with my mother so much. I said, okay, well, don't try to stop fighting with your mother for the next couple of weeks. Write down every time you fight with your mother and what precipitates the fight and how it resolves. And she comes back the next week and she says, I've got it figured out. My mother and I fight every time my boyfriend beats me up. Whoa. So there's a basic, so why is that relevant here? The basic principle is that if we see a behavior which is persistent, it's persistent because it's getting paid off. It's satisfying some need. And some people have needs that are not as simple as food, water, and contact. So there are people who need to be abused. I'm not saying that all victims need to be abused, but I think that when somebody is in a relationship, a persistent relationship, for a period of time, when their abuse is so common, it's a regular reason she fights with her mother, and she doesn't see that the abusing boyfriend is a problem. Okay, there are different sets of needs at work here. So in general, we experience the satisfaction of need as pleasurable. So one hint to you about what's going on important in your life is, when do you feel good? And another hint is, when are you not feeling good? Because when you're not feeling good, is a signal that stuff is going wrong. Stuff is off kilter. So it's my premise for this workshop purpose is that the process of acquiring meaning or apprehending meaning is responding to some complex need, and it feels good. And we'll try to give you examples of how that works. Now, I'm just going to go through a bunch of theory that we're not going to play with today to talk about aha, short word. It's actually an area of cognitive psychology, is a study of the aha phenomena, and in general, the aha is a cognitive experience that occurs when things fall into place. You see the solution to the puzzle, you realize how to get where you're going, something suddenly makes sense to you. So we're going to try to create, give you the opportunity for an aha. One of the things about aha is I can't force it on you. I can't make you have it, I can potentiate it, and if it happens, it happens. And annoyingly, in a group, one of the things that goes on, I'm going to warn you about, is some people get it, and you won't. Okay, and they say, okay, so we'll play this. All right, there's a phrase coming on. Do you hear it?
Yeah.
Aha just happened. Okay? It fell into place, okay? And so what's characteristic of aha is that there is a disconnect or a sense of tension because there's something not quite right with that sentence. I mean, it's English, all the words are simple words that make sense, but it's not connecting to you. And when the clue is given, I see it, aha. Okay, and so one of the messages about aha is it's not necessarily a big deal. It's not necessarily earth-shaking, but it's like, oh yeah, sure. and the funny thing is that those oh yeah, sures are way more powerful in eventually motivating behavior than the really big orgasmic experiences, because they you can have them more often. Or from my behaviorist days, you can get further reinforcing with M&Ms than with ice cream sundaes. So you get sick of the ice cream sundaes faster. And so it's okay. So let me give you the first handout of the day, and make sure you do the right one. Okay, you can take a couple of these, or just leave some on the table. This is a worksheet for your use, and later today, before we leave, I'll collect them without your names on them. Okay, so if you want to make sure you have this, they're all the same, so you can take one or two, and if you need more, we'll have more duplicated. The idea is I want to use this as a mechanism for focusing you on the introspection. The print is small and the lights are dim, so let me help you understand this. There are, the left-hand column is a space for you to write exemplars of when aha happened to you today, and what was going on around it. What did it feel like? What do you think facilitated it? And you might not have a clear idea. So I said automat, and you went on a trip. Okay, that was good. It felt good, and you may not have a clear awareness of what was surrounding it. But that's a good example. You can, just write automat, trip down. It doesn't have to be, unless we won't understand it. You can give me more detail. And on the right-hand column is space for you to give examples of when things aren't working. You feel bored, frustrated. Other people getting and you're not. What's going on in you around that to help us understand things that get in the way. Eventually, we're going to ask about what helps and what doesn't help, and I'll give you some general hints on the screen. In order to be able to have aha, there's got to be some kind of stimulus that's experience. Something happens in the world that presents the problem. My use of the word automat, my slide that had Maureen's name on it, some reference, the phrase about the house getting smaller when the sun came out. In order for the experience to be available, you have to have the opportunity to experience it. You have to have attentional focus, because if you're asleep and I say automatic can't work, okay, you were focused on reading the screen and you picked off a name that was familiar to you, and that worked. And you have to be aware that there's a possibility that meaning happens. The deadliest educational experiences I've had is when I haven't believed that the person I'm listening to has anything to give me. Many of you may have had that experience. I've had to take courses from that idiot who really didn't understand anything, and from the first day of class on, I was convinced that there was nothing there, and I carry that attitude into the class, and it becomes self-fulfilling. So there's got to be a continual awareness of the possibility. The psychologists tell us that what's going on with that experience is that you organize it. You connect it with other things that you know. You hear a word and it triggers childhood memories. You see a familiar name and you put that in context, and then you start organizing the context together. So sets of information in the perceptual process are organized by rules or principles. Sometimes rule is a strong word to describe this. It's rarely the case that you look at it and say, M-A-R-T-I-N-M. Let me see, the job is for me to figure out what M means. Okay, maybe it's Martin, maybe it's, Mary, okay? And nobody really thinks that way, okay? It just happens to you. But there is a structure to what's going on in terms of your association. And sometimes it's helpful to understand some of those rules to help you unpack or reveal the structure that's there. You receive the information, it's categorized, rules are selected, and perception is experienced. I want to make this point at the end. Communication is an important closing loop in this. If you only had that aha experience in private, first of all, it gets real lonely. Second of all, it's not validated. And the way you validate your experience is by communicating to other people that you've had it. Sometimes you say, ha, I've had it, eureka, and I'll explain, or sometimes you simply say it by laughing out loud or making a gesture, calling attention to the rest of the social people. And sometimes what you do is you have an opportunity to share your insights and have other people agree or disagree with you. I'm going to say something really hard here. I believe in an external reality. I don't know if you've done this perception reality thing in your journey so far. I believe that the world exists, that it follows physical laws, and that I'm part of it. I believe that I can know about that physical world through my sense experiences. Okay. And I believe that there's a single reality that we're all sharing. I don't think that we're each in our own separate worlds. However, when I'm talking about aha, about meaning, what is meaningful to me may be very different than what's meaningful to you. And so I'll talk about a perceptual reality that may exist in my mind that's different from your mind. So here's, for the purpose of today, at any rate, in any event, as long as you can say, I really believe blank, 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 you can't be wrong. As long as you're being honest. Let me say that again. Okay. I believe blank, 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 blank is a true statement if you're honest. Okay. So I am not really interested, we're going to talk about Shakespeare. I'm not really interested in proving to you who Shakespeare was, or whether Shakespeare was one person or many people. And the question, what did Shakespeare mean, is irrelevant. We can't ask him. He didn't give interviews. He didn't explain what he meant. So when, like with many kinds of art, when you have a reaction to a piece of art, personal, authentic, honest reaction, it's yours. And I can't tell you you're wrong. Okay? I can tell you I have a different reaction, okay? And I can tell you that other people have told me they have different reactions, but I'm going to try to ask you to not be defensive about your idea, okay? So, now, having said that, in the field of literature, it is possible to establish the principles, the ways of knowing that literature professionals and historians use to determine the weight that they would give an idea. That's a different thing. So somebody writes a dissertation about the use of the word wherefore in Shakespeare, and they bring together historic evidence from the time and common usage and 15 or 30 different examples of how wherefore is, and say, therefore, when Shakespeare used the word wherefore, we really think he meant what? He meant? All right, so famous scene in Shakespeare, Juliet is on the balcony, and the line is, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Okay, you've heard the line, okay? Okay, so I can tell that the actor and the director doesn't know Shakespeare when she plays it this way. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Because it doesn't mean, where are you? It should be played, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? A rose by any other name would be as sweet. Why is his name a problem? Why is Romeo's name a problem? Why are you Romeo?
Oh, because he's the family issue.
Because he's from the other family. And they fell in love, but he's from the other family.
Right.
If he was any other rose, it would be okay.
Right.
So the scene is Romeo, Romeo, why are you Romeo? Why didn't Shakespeare say why? He needed 10 syllables in the line.
I was,
Yeah.
You know, and so very often the choices that he made are to fit the convention of the poetry that he used, and that line, it happens to be an iambic pentameter, which is 10 beats to the line, and so he used wherefore because why would have only been one syllable. And so sometimes those choices happen, but so what I'm saying is a scholar of Shakespeare would exert effort to determining that Shakespeare meant why. Okay. Now, if you read that and said to me, I think Juliet is looking for Romeo, in the rule I said today, I have to say thank you for that. If you believe that. I believe something else. We can get into dialogue now about our two beliefs, and we may come up with a shared understanding, or you could continue to believe what you want, but it's not my intention in this workshop to determine truth or to show you that I know the right answers, okay? I know lots of answers, I have lots of beliefs, but we're talking about perceptual reality, and because I want to encourage you to share and communicate and seek validation. Now, if you say, I think Shakespeare wrote Hamlet about invaders from Mars, I would have to say, wow, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that? And understand, I'm the psychologist asking that question because I want to know, where did that come from? Okay, Shakespeare probably didn't have a lot of interest in aliens from Mars. No evidence for it. So we could talk about evidence and about the context, but for our purposes, when we're dealing with Shakespeare, there will be some times when you'll need to have some background information for context, and there'll be some times most of the time, you will find everything you need in the words. And playing with the words will get it for you. Okay, so we've already talked about what we're going to do, and fertile ground, and our laboratory. Shakespeare, so I'm going to give you a task now, because I promised to do this in about an hour, and I think I'm almost there. First, I'm going to describe to you a psychologist's gimmick. The gimmick is called the nominal group task, and it's an idea that developed in the 60s and 70s for problem solving, for group problem solving. The idea is that the group contains more resources than the individual, than any individual within the group, and to find ways of getting the group to share ideas is a useful tool. So we're going to use that tool. It's called the nominal group, and we'll work for about 5 minutes as individuals, generating some information, and then we'll take about 15. We probably won't need 15 minutes because we have 2 convenient groups of 4 here. We'll stay in those groups, and it probably won't take you 15 minutes to complete it, and then somebody from each group will report out, and then we'll collect the ideas. And my second handout today gives you a worksheet for that. You don't have to hand these in, and I don't think you're going to need more than one sheet. So the focus is Shakespeare. You all know who I'm talking about when I'm talking about Shakespeare. I want you not to focus on Shakespeare the individual, Shakespeare the man. We don't know very much about Shakespeare the man, to be honest with you. With some bits and pieces I'll share as we go along. This is Shakespeare the work. Okay, you've all been exposed at some point in time to Shakespeare work of some kind or another. So you have feelings and opinions about it. On the left-hand side, 3 things about Shakespeare's work that you like. Because I feel good about Shakespeare because 3 things. I feel bad about Shakespeare, or I feel negative about Shakespeare for 3 things. So that's your 5 minutes, and it starts now. Any questions about what I'm asking you to do? I am going to ask you to share later, so watch your language.